Welcome, Pats fans, to a special edition of This Week in Patriots Baseball, a podcast. We hope everyone has had a great off-season and are rested and recharged for the new season ahead. As the team wraps up spring training and heads north for opening day, now just around the corner, we've got a big announcement here to mark the occasion. Debuting right here today, we're proud to introduce This Week in Patriots Baseball, a podcast plus. Thanks to our longtime partners at Game Changer, plus loyal listeners like you, This Week in Patriots Baseball, a podcast plus, will bring you even more of the can't-miss Patriots content you won't find anywhere else. On-field wired segments, reenactments of game highlights, Where Are They Now with Pats alumni, and so much more. Plus, only for This Week in Patriots Baseball, a podcast plus subscribers, for select Patriots games, catch an alternate kids-only broadcast as we continue to expand the ever-popular Pats Live program. Now, for a limited time, we're offering today's first episode plus a free 7-day trial when you subscribe before opening day. Just visit WashingtonPatriotsBaseball.com/plus for more details and to sign up now. That's WashingtonPatriotsBaseball.com/plus. That's PLUS, not shift and the equal sign, to take advantage of this limited time offer. Don't delay. One more time, it's WashingtonPatriotsBaseball.com/PLUS, that's plus, to sign up. Thanks again to our friends at Game Changer, and of course, to loyal listeners like you. So what is this first episode all about? Well, for devoted Patriots fans, you know the team eclipsed a pretty significant milestone just last season. That's right, on July 30th, 2023, the Patriots played their 500th game in franchise history, a 6-1 win, fittingly, versus the longtime rival Orioles. After the game, we sat down with Patriots manager Keith Fischer to reflect on the achievement and, more importantly, on the cast of characters that has defined the Patriots for nearly a quarter century. It's the best of the best. We're calling it the Patriots All-500 Team, and you'll only hear it right here on This Week in Patriots Baseball, a podcast plus. So without further delay, here now that never-before-heard interview. It's Keith Fischer from inside the Patriots clubhouse after win number 500. It's your Patriots All-500 Team. Let's have a listen. I'm joined by Patriots manager Keith Fischer, and of course we are celebrating the Patriots' 500th game in team history. What a milestone. What a celebration this has been. We want to look at an all-time Patriots team, but not necessarily from a purely statistical standpoint. We want to look at guys' contributions both on and off the diamond. Longevity plays into this, their character, even some interesting storylines and twists and turns throughout different guys' careers. So we're going to go position by position and remember some of the Patriots of yore and sprinkle in some present-day Patriots as well. But should be a fun trip down memory lane.
This is great. I'm calling this the 500 team.
Calling this the 500 team.
Love it.
All right, well, let's start behind the plate. And again, in no particular order, but I will call out an interesting thread with three of the names that have been stalwarts behind the dish for the Patriots through the years. I think Jeff Pyatt for longevity is probably the first name mentioned, but Jeff Gregorio and Brian Winings, going back a handful of years, all three from the University of Pennsylvania. Very interesting feeder program that we've got from the Penn campus there. What do you make of that, Keith? And talk a little bit about each of those guys, because you've certainly seen them over the years.
Yeah, and then the interesting story there, one of my favorite sort of bits of symmetry is that Jeff Gregorio and Pyatt played with each other or knew each other back in college as well. I think they were on the same roster, or maybe there was some interaction between them back in college. So, just kind of a small world there. Pyatt had nothing to do with Gregorio coming onto the team. They discovered that after after Gregorio became a Patriot. So kind of cool when those things happen. It's a small world, but catcher has been a position that we've had a tough time establishing, a long-term answer for, right? Obviously JP had some really great years with us. There's no doubt about it. Maybe in his day, one of the most dominant catchers we've had. Wining's obviously also the same kind of deal, had a ton of talent back there, but really was only on the team for a couple of seasons. Recently, obviously, we've kind of solved that issue with Jeff Gregorio, as long as we can, continue to convince him not to retire. He's held it down for us back there the past couple of years, and as often as we, try to, give him some young legs to kind of complement him, he still ends up catching the majority of the innings, it seems like, and that seems to be playing out this year as well. But yeah, I think from a longevity perspective, it's kind of interesting. If you're going to put one guy, you might have to put Pyatt here. He's the guy who's on the team for, one of the longest tenured guys on the team. It dates back to 2008, I think we said, and started, really came on the team as primarily a hitter and a relief pitcher, pitching with that funky submarine motion, but, kind of tried to find a home on the infield for a couple of years before eventually becoming a guy that we could really plug in behind the plate, and would call a good game and really have a lot of toughness back there. So
I think you still see remnants of that submarine style, even when he does make a rare appearance these days behind the dish. He's never really lost that from his repertoire.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
He's got a unique delivery.
So yeah, I think for the 500 team, with honorable mention to those other guys, we might have to go with Pyatt in that spot. One other guy I'll mention from the early days of the Pats is Paul Libby. So Paul was, really one of the anchors of our team in those early days of, especially when I was managing in my first tenure of managing the team. So Paul kind of did a little bit of catching and first base, so he can be kind of an honorable mention at both of those spots. But he's another guy I definitely want to call out here.
And of course, you mentioned JP. That's JP Bellman.
Right, that's right.
Great defensive catcher. Could also hit the ball just a country mile.
If we would have had the dugout guy award back then, he certainly would have been in the annual running, I would say.
Great guy. All right, well, let's keep making our way around the diamond. First base, I think, recency bias a little bit, but the longevity is certainly there with a guy like Sean Mackenheimer. Hard to argue with him. Probably some of his defense gets overlooked by his offensive prowess, but he's pretty slick around the base too with the glove and with his footwork. And I'll say in my tenure with the Patriots, he's probably one of, if not the smoothest swings, and one of those guys that the ball really just jumps off his bat. And home runs are, few and far between a lot of times, but Sean is one of the few guys that every time he's up at the plate, you feel like there's, sometimes guys kind of luck into a home run. When Sean hits it, there's no lucking into it. He's one of those guys that I think strikes fear into opposing pitchers. Anytime he's at the plate, he's got a reputation around Fed ball, around the DMV as one of the most dangerous hitters in the area. So Shawnee Mack, for my money, is at the top of this list.
Yeah, that was probably the easiest one to pencil in here. This is a guy who was in the DC Wood Hall of Fame for that prowess that you mentioned, just even in the area. Everybody knows when he steps to the plate what he can do. You mentioned the defense. The other thing to mention, you mentioned the defense, you mentioned the power. Probably the most incredible thing is the lack of strikeouts. I think he's somewhere well under 20 strikeouts for his Patriot career. We'd have to pull the actual number But I don't think he has struck out 20 times in now his 12th season as a Washington Patriot. So incredible. Think about all of the at-bats that entails, just somebody who you can always count on putting the ball in play and giving you a chance. And more often than not, he's getting the job done too. So Shawnee Mack, easy starting first baseman on our 500 team, without a doubt. A couple other honorable mentions that I want to throw out here at first base, kind of dating way back to the beginning. I would say this is a guy who was on the original roster, is a guy named Kevin Pinkstaff. I'm not sure if any of the current Patriots or anybody in the current Patriot family will remember Kevin, but here's a guy who was a left-handed stick, and talk about a guy who could hit the ball out of the park. Those were the metal bat days, but when he hit the ball, there would be no doubt about it. They would be going out with a wood bat as well. So he was a guy with a tremendous amount of power and played with the Patriots for about 4 or 5 seasons at the beginning. And another guy to mention who just sort of held down first base for almost a good decade there, was Matt Simmons. So, I don't know if Matt listens to the podcast. Obviously hasn't been playing with us the past couple seasons, but he was a longtime Patriot who always played good defense over there at first base. So want to give him an honorable mention in the annals of Patriot first baseman. Matt Simmons certainly made his mark.
Some great names there. All right, as we look now to the middle infield, let's look at second base and a couple names from really recent years. We've been fortunate with some optionality there at second base. Sean Harding, the Honorable Luke Mirabella. There's somebody you talk about contributions on and off the field. Of course, the magistrate of our Kangaroo Court, and Thomas Aguirre, a big part of Patriots' success, offensively, defensively, certainly at second base.
Yeah, we might have to put this one out to the listeners and get some listener feedback on who they think should get the nod here at second, because it was tough for me to choose between that group of guys. There are probably some other names that we could throw in there as well. But Sean was always a guy who was on the team. The same thing with Thomas now. When I know that when they're in for the game, they're one of the first names that I'm able to plug into the game base Harding, second base Aguirre. So it's always nice to have that luxury of a lockdown defensive option who's also going to, contribute offensively as well. And then, certainly in Thomas's case, recently he's been, really been deadly out of that leadoff spot. Since we moved him to that leadoff spot in 2021, this team has been playing its best stretch of baseball in any 3-year span that we've had. So, there's a lot of reasons that go into it, but it's not lost on me that, inserting him at the top of the lineup when he was really showing signs of hitting the ball well in 2021, he just hasn't stopped since then. So for a guy who's just in his, 4th season now, he's made his mark, and you have to consider him for this 500 team, even though he's somewhat more of a recent member of the roster.
I would say it's hard to think about Thomas from a middle infield partnership standpoint, and looking at shortstop, not think about Nate Kalem. And of course, Keith, you mentioned even at the top of the lineup, batting wise, Thomas is a real table setter there, leading off, but more often than not, Nate is right behind him in that 2 spot and doing a great job. So as we look at shortstop, Nate Kalem has kind of quietly crept up there from a longevity standpoint. He's been in the system now, I think 7 years. He's been active for 5+. So Nate Kalem is a guy, plays a great shortstop, has really formed a nice partnership with Thomas. They make it look routine, but some of the double plays that those two turn together, and the chemistry that they've formed, it's really something. So Nate is a name I think that is probably at the top of the list there for the shortstop position.
He could slide over to third as well when we need. And yeah, just offensively, he's just, become an animal over the past number of seasons. And he really, as you mentioned, forms just really a deadly 1-2 punch there at the top of our lineup. So when both Thomas and Nate are in, it just gives you a good feeling, and we're going to be in good shape offensively. So Nate has definitely staked a claim to that shortstop spot on this team. But there is a guy who, if you go back to the very beginning of the squad, back to the early 2000s, there's a guy by the name of Jamie Stroud, who I might still have to give a nod to at this point. This is a guy who's in the Braves minor league system for a while before an injury prevented him from moving forward. But we were lucky to have Jamie on our team for a number of years. I believe we picked him up through a preseason draft kind of situation prior to the 2002 season, and he played with us until he moved to Richmond, probably sometime around 2006 or 7. But a very slick fielding shortstop, great hitter, a very heady base runner, and just a great teammate, a great guy to keep in touch with him to this day. So tough call. You even have to mention Rob Gunther in that conversation for some of the plays that he's made even in just the past year and a half since he's been on the team. Rob has maybe done some things that we haven't even seen in 20 years. But I might go with Jamie Stroud as the All-500 shortstop.
All right. Well, now as we look to the hot corner, this is another one where some guys have rotated in and out of that position, and we try to think of guys that have really staked the claim to it. We sort of kept coming back to middle era Patriots baseball, and three names that kept rising to the top: Nick Nimarella, Nate Kerr, and Bobby Shelton.
Yeah, Nick, obviously probably could have been mentioned in the shortstop conversation as well. Nick played a lot of shortstop over the years, but came up, that's right, in 2004, I want to say, for Nick was his first year, maybe even 2003, potentially. He came up as a third baseman and, certainly played a lot there over the years. I think he'd be the guy who would be our starter on the 500 team. Obviously a guy who was not only a contributor offensively and defensively for a long, long period of time. I mean, he had a career that probably stretched over 15 years with the Pats, but also, for his work off the field, helping me over the years with co-managing responsibilities and things of that nature. So for all of those reasons, probably got to give the nod to Nick Nimarella. But two other guys from those early to sort of middle years of the Patriots, Nate Kerr and Bob Shelton, two guys who held down that hot corner and again, contributed offensively. Both of those guys were top of the order hitters. Nate also, contributed on the mound as well. And were really part of the fabric of the team for a really long time. So shout out to both Nate Kerr and Bobby Shelton as honorable mentions for third base, but we'll give it to Nick Nimarella.
Nate, if you're out there listening, I do always feel a connection to you, man. I recall one fateful game. I at least accept partial responsibility for this. In my defense, you forgot to bring your cleats to a game, and I lent you my running shoes. I mean, I can't imagine what the fine would be. I mean, adjusted for inflation now, but and that's a devastating fine. But the worst part is literally adding insult to injury. I think you blew out your knee.
Yeah. So I didn't know this tidbit that they were your tennis sneakers.
They were my tennis sneakers.
I do remember he showed up to the game late. It was down at the stadium down in Prince William.
Okay. And
he wanted to get in that bat. He had some sneakers. Apparently they were your sneakers. He went up there.
Yep.
And took a swing, and pivoting on his back foot, his I think it was his back knee gave out, or maybe it was his front knee. I can't remember. One of his knees, and
you got a 50% chance of getting it right.
Lost for the season at that point. So wow, I do remember that very, very well. I think that was like the third game of that year. We were not far into that season.
He was a big piece. He could hit the ball. He good defensively. Gave us,
and he was one of our pitchers. He was one of our pitchers back.
That was a big loss. All right, lots of good memories, a few painful memories, but a fun trip around the infield there. Let's go out to the outfield. Outfield is a little bit different. We were remarking in our pre-production meeting, Keith, there are so few people over the years that list outfield as their primary position, let alone their only position. So this sometimes can be sort of an odd mix of characters, but there have been some stalwarts, especially here in recent years. So starting in left field, a couple familiar names for Patriots fans, young and old: Mike Mayer and Charlie Galbraith. Two guys that have staked a claim to that left field spot.
Yeah, Charlie is a long-time outfielder. He, as we mentioned, probably the second longest tenured Patriot. He did have a couple-year break in the middle, but his first year was in 2005, so I think it's now his 17th year of Patriot baseball. So obviously we don't see Charlie on a real consistent basis, but he's been a member of the team for so long and has been a member of that outfield, and he's primarily an outfielder, so he certainly deserves a mention here for left field. But yeah, Mayer probably gets the spot. Mike is a guy who's been, one of our best players and most important players since he joined the team. He can really has slotted in really in almost every position, probably, I think, except catcher since he's been on the team. So, he really could have been talked about at any one of these positions. I think in these past few seasons, certainly in my second tenure here as manager, he's been playing primarily in the outfield or more in the outfield, and that's been out of necessity. We just haven't had the depth out there in the outfield, and Mike is a guy that I can trust really anywhere on the field, and he's taken on that role. So, for that reason alone, he certainly deserves a spot on this team, and left field is kind of his current position, I'd say. So Mayer is a guy, and of course, we're not going to mention his contributions during the years that he was the primary manager of the team. So obviously a very important figure in Patriots history. So next we'll just move to center field, and I'll just move this right along, Chad. So I don't think there's going to be too much of a surprise who we have here in the starting spot. But first, a couple honorable mentions, or at least one. We have Russell Kessinger. So for those of you who have been on the team for a long time, you might remember Russ. Russ famously would work at a bar in Baltimore on Saturday evenings, and usually finish that up around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then make the drive down to the DC area. And Chad and I would find him sleeping on our couch back in the day when Chad and I lived together, and getting a few hours of sleep before the game, before we would drive him with us to the game. So Russ was always a welcome character, certainly a very colorful character as well, but a very gifted ball player as well. So he
literally colorful. He had some great tattoos.
Great tats, brought a little bit of an edge to the team.
Yeah.
Back then, and he eventually moved to the Philadelphia area, so we have missed him since then. But Russ Kessinger certainly deserves a mention in the story of the Washington Patriots. But if we're going to go with a starting outfielder or starting center fielder on the 500 team, there is none other than yourself, my friend. Obviously, you have held down center field as your primary role on this team on the field. You have a primary role off it here on this podcast, but not only have you held it down for us on the Patriots, but you've done it at a level that really, I think most would agree, is at the top of the league in terms of defensive prowess. So I think it's a very easy choice here, similar to maybe the Shawnee Mack selection earlier. This is an easy one. Chad Kerr is the center fielder on the 500 team for the Bats. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm humbled, and I'm just very grateful that you can continue to pencil me in to the lineup, and also grateful to the league that they allow designated fielders as part of the very gracious interpretation of the rules. So as long as that persists and you'll keep having me, I love suiting up every day for the Patriots. So it's very much appreciated. All right, enough with that. Let's move to our other corner outfield spot over to right.
Yep.
A guy who's really, again, also made it his own over the better part of the last decade. At least you think about right fielders for the Patriots. I think the first name that comes to people's minds, the MVP, Billy Schultz.
Yeah, he's got to get the nod here. I mean, just from, like we talked about it, the guys who are willing to own that outfield position and be reliable out there. And Billy's been just that. I mean, Billy's been a guy who both offensively and defensively has really improved every single season, up till today. So it's really been remarkable, his arc on the team. Obviously, always in the running for a dugout guy, always in the running, used to be in the running for a hot head, but you bring some fire and energy to the dugout. So Billy's been an invaluable member of the team. They don't call him MVP for no reason. So Billy Schultz, probably the starter here in right field on the 500 team. Honorable mention, Mike Howell, a guy who came over from the River Bandits with, when the River Bandits folded, he was one of the guys who came over and really manned our outfield for a number of years. Had a good couple of offensive years at the plate as well. So shout out to Mike Howell as well on the 500 team for honorable mention.
I think things turned out okay for Mike. I believe he relocated to Hawaii, so I don't feel too bad for him if he had to give up his Patriots playing days. I think he's probably doing okay. When we looked at our pitching rotation, generally we have a starting rotation of 3. Of course, we've got a few honorable mentions, but this list could really go in any number of directions. But some of the first names onto the sheet, if you will, spanning a couple of eras, going all the way back. I think you got to start the conversation with Billy Filippone.
Yeah. He's probably one of the first guys who, really established himself as an ace on the team, if you will. I think Flip's first year was 2007. And that was probably, maybe his even most dominant year where he really put the team on his back and we actually made a little run in the playoffs that year, if I'm not mistaken. So he was a guy who came in and not only made an immediate impact on the field in a big way, but you can't really find somebody who has the bigger personality than Billy Flip. So he was a guy who certainly made a big impact in the dugout and off the field as well. And was a guy you like having on your side, for sure. So
all time, he was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Flip definitely in the conversation there. A couple guys, so before we talk about some of these other guys on the list, let me just talk about some of the guys who maybe are not going to get the nod here, but certainly deserve a mention. So, the Connor Lewises and the Robert Ransom of the world. Okay, those 2 guys specifically. Maybe there's no 2 guys who have been more dominant in their time with the Patriots than those 2 guys. But if we're looking at this, through the lens of the 500 team and overall impact and longevity, I think some of the other guys on the list, would get the nod in the 3-man 500 team rotation. Will Brook is another guy who the past 2 seasons has had a huge impact, but, maybe just don't quite have the longevity yet. So, those guys aside, with all due respect and honorable mentions to those guys, I think our 3-man rotation, I think we definitely settled on Flip as one of those guys. Another throwback that I'll mention is Mike Renzo, who, again, probably is right there in that conversation with Connor and Ransom as being dominant when he was at the height of his, right before his injury. I guess he did tear his labrum at one point, but before that injury, he was as dominant as anybody we had seen, and he really was provided a jolt to our team at a time when we, were sort of desperate for pitching, and he stabilized our rotation. As I mentioned, was very dominant in this time, and even came back after his injury. So I would definitely give Mike Renzo a nod in that all-time Patriot rotation. And then the third guy, you think of him as sort of being, a guy that we've relied on in more recent years, but then you start to look at it and, he's already been on the team for 7 seasons now. It's Justin DiLorenzo, a guy who's just really been our real steady ace for the last 7 seasons. And even when we've had, guys like Connor in the mix as well, Justin has still been there and provided those quality innings. You always know that, you're going to be in the game when Justin's on the mound. He knows what he's doing out there. And he even seems to be getting better with age, if you ask me. So Flip, Renzo, and DiLorenzo, I think, are the guys who have earned it from a performance and longevity standpoint. And certainly honorable mentions, like I said, to Ransom and to Connor Lewis, to Will Brooks. And I would bet Mike Mayer would argue that he should be in that conversation as well, because Mayer was forced into many, many innings over the years on the mound for the Pats, and was able to get by with a lot of knuckleballs. So yeah, that those would be the guys that come to mind on the mound for the Pats.
And the other footnote I want to add on Justin, and it really isn't a footnote, but it was voted the photo of the year. One of the defining images of last year's playoff run is that game. The game Justin wasn't even playing in, and he came out. He's coaching first base, and on an important play at the plate, Justin's down there giving the slide signal, giving the safe signal. I think it was Sean Mackenheimer slides in, and that's something really special too. When guys, it's an off day or they're not in the game, but they're that plugged in and invested in the other guys and helping them have success. So all good choices there. All right, let's bring it home here with the designated hitter. And this is another one of those where, because of some of the roles in the league, you have a lot of designated fielders, you can have a lot of designated hitters. But this guy, again, sort of quietly creeping up there in longevity, there really seemed to be one name that rose above the rest for the Patriots 500 designated hitter.
Yeah, now in year 8, and he's probably listening to this thinking that we were going to leave him off the 500 team and was probably getting upset about it. But of course,
he would have walked off the team if that had happened.
Absolutely. But yeah, we got to give a nod to Austin Morgan, the new dad on the team, as our all-time Pats 500 team DH. Austin came to the team. Obviously, we knew all about him. We had played against him on the, when he was on the River Bandits. We had lots of battles with them back in the Blue and Gray League. He loves to remind us all the time about the various hits that he got off various Patriot pitchers back then. So we knew what he can do when he came to the team, and he's really, he's really proven to be all of that. And he's another guy who just seems to continue to get better. Obviously, last year, during the second half of the season last year, I don't think I'd ever seen him, really be on such a tear like that. That's one of the, I'd say, the best second halves that any Patriot has put together to put the team on his back. Had some huge hits, obviously, in the playoffs, and we know what happened in the finals as well in Game 1. So, he really, I think, developed last year into one of the most feared hitters in the league. And when you have, Shawnee Mack and then Austin Morgan in your lineup, that's a real fortunate place to be. So, he's been locked into that DH role, into that number 4 or 5 spot in our lineup for a number of years now. And, I don't foresee that changing for quite some time.
Very well said, Keith. Of course, we would be remiss not to also name, you got to have a skipper for the 500th team. And, we won't drag this out with a whole bunch of suspense. But Keith, of course, longest tenured manager over a couple different stints here with the Patriots over the course of 23 seasons, 22 plus seasons. I think the record on the field, speaks for itself. You're continue to push your record further and further, above the 500 mark. And all of those accolades very well deserved. But I think we saw 2 years ago the Lifetime Achievement Award, again, from Patriots past, present. There's a great deal of admiration and respect and appreciation for, everything that you pour into this team. So, again, not much doubt on this one either, but your Patriots 500 team skipper, of course, it's Keith Fischer. Keith, any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Chad. I said this a couple years ago to the team, but I honestly wouldn't be doing it if I didn't get so much enjoyment out of it myself and get so much enjoyment out of the camaraderie and friendships that we have on the team, and the enjoyment that I get out of going to war with you guys every week. So this is a great honor for me. Can't take it without certainly giving a shout out to Tom Cochran, who was the initial manager of the Patriots and started this whole thing. He's probably couldn't have in his wildest dreams imagined that we'd be sitting here talking about the 500th game in Patriot history when he started this team back in the summer of 2001, when he was probably 23 years old or something like that. And here we are 500 games later. It's been a wild ride. Of course, Mike Mayer had a good 5-year stint as manager as well. It really helped bridge the gap during a time when I couldn't focus on it as much. So the team certainly wouldn't exist today without Mayer as well. And here we are. I'm happy to be back over the past number of seasons. And I'll keep guiding this ship as long as you guys want to keep coming out.
All right, our thanks to Keith for his time and thoughts, and we certainly hope you enjoyed that look back on the Patriots All-500 Team. And of course, if you want more Pats coverage like that, the best place to get it is by subscribing to This Week in Patriots Baseball, a podcast plus, only at WashingtonPatriotsBaseball.com/plus. Once again, our thanks to Patriots manager Keith Fischer, our friends at Game Changer, and our legion of loyal Patriots fans around the world. Quick programming note, opening day is closing in fast. The curtain rises on the 2024 season on April 6th. Yes, that is a rare Saturday game for the Pats. First pitch, 4:05 p.m. versus the Potomac Shockers. Also an odd start time, but it does mean the Pats are the only show in town, so prime billing to start the season. We'll, of course, have all the opening day pregame pageantry live from Oakton High School before handing it off to Chet Sturgler for Shockers Patriots at 4:05. That's opening day, Saturday, April 6th, 4:05 p.m. from Oakton High School as your Washington Patriots take on the Potomac Shockers. It's another season of Patriots baseball, and we look forward to sharing it with you every step of the way. We'll speak to you soon. Until then, don't forget to try your best. So long, everybody.